sex allegations. Killing grandma and grandpa down at the senior citizens home, sticking COVID patients in with the seniors. The More and More and More and More Land Commission. The good old grabbing of real estate up in the Adirondacks and in the, what do they call those? The southern tier there. I'm forgetting. It'll come to me here in a minute. Catskills. No, the Catskills are in Massachusetts. Sorry. But in any event, the Blue Line Park, the big old gusher, the cash cow, the Adirondack Blue Line, the 6 million acre socialist boondoggle. Yep, good old MoreLand and MoreLand and MoreLand and MoreLand, forcing people into economic poverty and stealing more and more and more land upstate by imposing all kinds of environmental restrictions that really don't apply to the big donors, like the Rothschild Natural Resources Corporation. They're in Whitehall, New York. What do they call them there? Oh, Nyco, owned by iMetals out of Paris, France. Owned by the Rothschilds Natural Resources Corporation in Paris. iMetals. Nyco Mining. New York Mining Corporation. Right smack dab in the middle of the Adirondack Park, you got Nyco Mining, right? And then, of course, they hand out the marijuana growing licenses to the people doing the paving for the state. And, Pelham, or Pelham, I guess the name, Pelham Industries. You've got far more than sexual allegations against Andy Cuomo. It's like the hiding of the records on the targeting of landowners in the Blue Line Park, and the hiding of the records on the dumping of massive amounts of sewage and industrial waste into Lake Champlain and the Hudson River and the St. Lawrence Seaway. Oh my God, the St. Lawrence River is nothing but a huge open sewer. But yeah, let's talk about the sexual allegations. Yeah, the Catskills, excuse me. It's the Catskills. The park lands in the Catskill Mountains there. Let's go back to More and More and More and More Land. The Buffalo Billions, Skilos Bruno, good old Joe Bruno. You see, what's kind of interesting about Joe Bruno is I went to school with his kids there at Lake George High School there, the old Lake George school system. And then, of course, you had that David Decker. He got found guilty. He went to prison for all that wheeling and dealing in DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation, grant money when they were finagling building a fake swamp. They built an artificial swamp over at Lake George Village there to handle the runoff from West Brook. You know, they needed, wow, $1,000 a truckload for swamp dirt when the state owned my parents' lands at Harris Bay and at Catskill Bay. But they paid $1,000 for a truckload. Yeah, and they bought hundreds of truckloads and had it shipped in from down somewhere south of Albany. Now, if that's not a hoot, I don't know what the hell is. They shipped in the swamp dirt from south of Albany somewhere. $1,000 a truckload. What a racket to build the artificial swamp at the old site of the Gaslight Village. Yep, what a freaking scam, Mr. Carasone, the district attorney of Warren County. What a freaking scam, Judge Hall. John Hall Jr., what a freaking scam, huh? But yeah, folks, let's look at the sexual assault of the landowners in the Adirondack Park by the State Environmental Conservation Mafia. The old mafia. They want to control every aspect of life in the Adirondacks through environmental enforcement. Yep, they drove the price of real estate down through the floors, and they grabbed it all up for, well, what they say there when they outweigh, oh yeah, we always get the land cheaper. We always get the land cheaper by manipulating the environment or the market involving the real estate. That's called racketeering, Letitia James, racketeering. Not sexual allegations. Shafting people for their real estate through your matrix, through your system there, and environmental confiscation. And trust me, I have a personal story about what they did to my parents. They did worse than sexually molest my mother and father. Let's talk about that for a little while. Corporate-owned news. The corporate-owned news, they want to control the conversation to keep the real investigation from happening. Why is it that environmental confiscation is driving the price of real estate down, 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 and down? So the state can come in and buy everything up and engage in what? A big New York State-owned amusement park? Yeah. The environmental tourism of New York State, competing directly with mom and pops that were trying to be in the business in the first place, competing directly against private-owned campgrounds and private-owned wilderness ventures. You know, the Wild Center, there's a good example. Who owns the Wild Center and all this other bunch, the Adirondack Museum? Who are these people? Who are these big corporate, ultra-rich interests behind competing against mom and pops there in the Blue Line Socialist Park? So yeah, let's talk about the MoreLand scandal. You know, I'm not making little of the sexual allegations, but I think when you're killing grandma and grandpa and then hiding the open records, that's what they love to do. You make open records demands on the state of New York, and they hide them. They will not comply with open records requests. That's just the way they do business. It's the status quo. So, folks, all the information and the links, I'm going to post it below. And remember one thing. Andy Cuomo and Basil Sagos and that bunch from Department of Environmental Confiscation and the Lake George Park Commission. Let's drag the old Lake George Park Commission into this with the Lake George Association, and their flushings of Lake George, New York. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to leave it right there. And Andy Cuomo, you need to open up all those environmental confiscation records. That'll be an interesting walk in the park.